Ever have a movie experience so epic that you just know you're never going to see anything quite like it again? Like you'll never quite reach that same emotional high you felt in that special moment? Well, probably not so much in recent years, but by golly,
Yeah,
there
that's
was
for
once
sure.
a time when going to a movie theatre meant a chance to experience pure magic and wonder on the biggest screen imaginable.
Yep.
And I don't think any movies captured that feeling quite like The Lord of the Rings.
For sure.
Peter
I agree
Jackson's
100%.
magnum
Yeah.
opus,
I think Lord of
the
the Rings
epic
was
trilogy
fantastic.
to end all trilogies, the apex of big budget Hollywood filmmaking, balanced out by mature storytelling and an abiding respect for the source material instead of some narcissistic filmmaker determined to put their own stamp on it. Films that would be literally impossible to make at any other time before or since.
It's
And
true.
because the trilogy is getting its 25th anniversary
I don't think we're
re-release,
capable of
oh
making
my
films
God,
like this
I'm
now.
old. People have been taken to social media and sharing some of their favourite moments and scenes that have stuck with them for the past quarter of a century.
Can you imagine
And
all the
well, I
DEI
felt like it's
legislation
damn well
and
time
stuff
I
like that
chimed
on
in with
films like
mine,
this
because
nowadays?
it's all too easy to spend your days bitching and moaning about the state of modern entertainment here on YouTube. Rightly so in most cases, but it's also nice to be reminded once in a while that yes, movies and TV shows can conjure up some pretty fucking incredible experiences.
For
And
sure.
well, this right here is mine. This may be one of the greatest and most epic scenes, not just in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, not just in fantasy, but in all of cinema. It is fucking perfection. The build-up, the stakes, the character moments, the choreography, the soundtrack, the culmination of every story thread and character arc and decision that's been woven throughout the whole movie.
For sure.
This is
And I think also what made Lord of the Rings fantastic was also this whole idea of there was this overarching understanding of good and evil. There was good overcoming evil, and there was no ambiguity about it. You think about, I suppose Game of Thrones would be kind of a good example. The characters in Game of Thrones were not necessarily moral people. Like even the quote unquote good guys, barring, I suppose, Jon Snow was probably the most moral character out of the whole bunch. But even still, you know, he kind of turned it a little bit soft with Daenerys at the end. But at the end, I suppose he came right, and I know the ending wasn't to everybody's liking. I thought it was okay. But you couple that with, you know, there's very seldom do you see characters in TV series and movies where, especially nowadays, is where there's a strong stance of the objective good and the objective evil, and the good characters are good. They're morally good as well. They stand for virtue and honor and valor and these kind of things, which are so quick to be sort of watered down. And as opposed to, once again, Game of Thrones, there's just this, no one really stood out as a person with high morality, so to speak.
Payoff on the grandest scale imaginable, and watching this moment unfold in a cinema screen 24 years ago was an experience that'll stay with me for the rest of my life. And so I want to try to explain why I think it works so well, because a great scene is more than just what happens in that one moment. It's everything that led up to it, everyone involved in it, everything it means for the wider story. So let us explore it together, shall we? First, the setup. The scene takes place at the culmination of the Battle of Helm's Deep at the end of the Two Towers, which by the way is my favourite battle of the trilogy, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, the forces of Rohan led by King Theoden are under siege by an army of Uruk-hai sent by Saruman to wipe them out. With most of their horsemen dispersed across the country, Theoden has no choice but to lead his depleted forces to the fortress of Helm's Deep, which should at least give them a fighting chance against the vastly superior army. As Aragorn and the others head to the refuge, Gandalf leaves in search of Eomer, who led most of his men away after being dismissed by Wormtongue. It's established very clearly that Theoden and his men are completely outclassed in this battle. Their army consists mostly of old men and boys conscripted into service, hastily armed with ancient weapons and dented armour, relics of past wars barely fit for purpose now. They know there's no real hope of victory. All they can really do is hold out as long as possible
hopelessly
and hope that
outnumbered,
Gandalf can get to them in time. On the other hand, there's the army of Uruk-hai, massive, powerful, overwhelming in number, and composed of the biggest, strongest, and most fearless orcs the world has ever seen. An enemy that burns and destroys everything in its path, that doesn't care about casualties and absolutely won't stop until it achieves its mission.
As we were
This isn't an army of invasion or conquest, it's an army of annihilation. If Helm's Deep falls,
a little bit fitting,
die.
I suppose.
As far as stakes go, it doesn't get much higher than that. Secondly, the characters. Theoden is a man with the weight of the world resting on his shoulders, an old king in his twilight years whose mind was slowly poisoned by his chief advisor, who allowed his kingdom to fall into decline and his armies to fade away, whose own son was killed in the fighting without him even knowing about it. A man who was barely saved by Gandalf, who wakes up at last only to find his country under siege and the fate of his people balanced on a knife edge.
Yeah, man.
He knows that his time is almost up,
fitting.
that this might be his last battle, but he's determined to go down fighting. Balancing him out is Aragorn, a man who struggled to lead the Fellowship ever since Gandalf fell in Moria, whose every decision seems to have led to disaster, and who barely even made it here himself. Just as this could be Theoden's last battle, it's also Aragorn's first. He's never led an army into battle before, he's never commanded troops or issued orders, but even he knows that their position is almost hopeless.
Yeah, that's right, because he wasn't king yet.
Just like Theoden, he's resolved to fight until the bitter end.
Then I shall die as one of them.
Beast.
Thirdly, there's the battle itself. The Uruk-hai throw themselves against the fortress like a wave. This isn't a carefully coordinated assault with precise maneuvering and tactical deployments. It is a brute force sledgehammer attack that relies on two things: overwhelming power and sheer weight of numbers. J.R.R. Tolkien lived through the horrors of the First World War, and he saw for himself the human wave attacks that sacrificed hundreds of thousands of lives to gain a few miles of territory, and this battle is a perfect reflection of that. Bit by bit, the exhausted and wounded defenders are forced back into the citadel. The orcs have taken thousands of casualties by this point, but it doesn't matter to them. They don't care about losses, all they care about is victory, and it's almost in their
it's really a shame that we can't make stuff anymore like this.
What can men do against such reckless hate?
This is an enemy the likes of which Theoden and his people have never faced before. An army that will not stop, that can't be daunted and won't show them any mercy. A relentless machine of war that even human courage can't stand against. With all hope seemingly lost, Aragorn suggests one last suicidal charge, trying to buy time for the women and children to escape, knowing they won't make it far but determined to try anyway.
Ride out and meet them. For death and glory.
And this is like a great example of...
You know, people often point to Theoden.
This is like a great example of you choosing to act in courage in a, shall we say, God-fearing civilization, a God-fearing society. Aragorn choosing to ride out in some last-ditch effort, knowing that it's going to be hopeless, but riding out regardless. It's almost like that act, unbeknownst to him, although Gandalf did say that he was going to come. I forget the exact quote from Gandalf, but I think I recall in the movie, Aragorn does look and he notices in the window that the sun is rising, and Gandalf makes mention of look to my coming on the 5th day or whatever, when the sun rises. So it's like, it was almost like possibly a calculated thing. But it was also, Aragorn was kind of taking a last-ditch effort as well, because there was hope that Gandalf would come. But there wasn't 100% surety. And it's like, that act is almost like an act of faith. And once again, it's almost like Gandalf's coming is like the reward for acting in faith. Not trying to preach, just laying it out there.
Fields is the best one of the trilogy, but for me, it's this one right here.
Fell deeds awake.
Now for wrath, now for ruin, and the Red Dawn.
It's not eloquent or heroic, it doesn't inspire thoughts of victory, it's the last words of a man facing the end, knowing there'll be no one left to sing songs about him when it's all over. A man whose only goal now is to fight and die.
Yeah.
And fight they do, their charge carrying them all the way down the causeway into the very heart of the enemy army, where they're sure to be overwhelmed and wiped out in a matter of seconds. That's when it finally happens. The thing Aragorn had pinned all his hopes on.
Yeah, there's that scene, looking to the light on the fifth day, I think was the quote, something like that.
Fuck yeah, bro. And so we come down to it at last. Gandalf arriving at the last moment to save the day with the sun rising behind him.
Yeah.
Éomer and his men riding to the aid of their king. And between them, an army of orcs, battered and depleted after a whole night of bloody carnage, but still very much in the fight and determined to win at any cost. Even now, the situation seems hopeless. The music you're hearing in this moment isn't triumphant, it's tragic.
And there you can kind of see like the visuals, you know, it's the whole idea of, you know, light overcoming the darkness.
Straight into a wall of spears,
it's very clear there's no middle ground, and
horses,
as you know, they did
human
do.
Courage thrown helplessly against a machine of war. And I say machine because that's exactly what they're up against. Pay attention to the Uruk-hai here, the way they march in lockstep, their brutal industrial looking armour, the sound their boots make as they trample the ground.
Yeah, and all those pikes mean that, you know, that first row is going to probably die, but it's
World War I,
in the grand scheme of things, it's worth it, you know.
Industrialized war, the first war of mass production, where machinery and technology was more powerful than human courage. It left him with a deep mistrust of technology and industry and the destruction of nature and tradition, and you can see that woven throughout his writing, and it's perfectly encapsulated in this scene right here. And at the last second, when the two armies are about to clash, it turns out that nature itself lends a helping hand. Again, people point to the ride of the Rohirrim in Return of the King as their greatest moment in the trilogy, but for me, it's this. This scene takes you on the kind of emotional roller coaster that few other movies have ever been able to match. Even watching it and describing it right here brings a lump to my throat because it's that fucking good. In a trilogy bursting at the seams with poignant, epic, awe-inspiring moments, this for me is the greatest one of them all. Even now, a quarter of a century later, this scene still gets to me, and I'm very grateful I got to see it when it happens. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Nice.